Okay, let's kick off with the session which is covering the EOSC Service Management System. So, EOSC Service Management System, what is it all about? It's to enable us within the project to deliver the services professionally, reliably, in a repeatable manner, and of course trustworthy manner as well across all of EOSC. But there's a limit how we can do that because of the nature of the complexity and the dynamic aspects of EOSC, currently growing number of services. So we need to understand what the exact scope is of what we need to do, what we can do, and what we need to do as far as controlling the aspects of service delivery. It's an ITSM, it's an IT Service Management System, delivered as part of the EOSC Future project, and it does cover all aspects of service delivery. It's part of the core here, so that's where the SMS sits. It covers all of the aspects of the core, even though it only sits as one aspect as itself, because all of these other aspects of the core are activities or services in their own right, so they need to be delivered and we need to control that delivery. So we have the core platform and the core coordination above it. This includes security coordination, which is an integral aspect of the service management system, the onboarding process, knowledge base, PID policy, rules participation, all with varying degree of integration within the service management system. It also touches upon the EOSC support activities, which is the left-hand box in this architecture diagram, in that it covers one of the services, which is actually a non-core service, nevertheless delivered by the project, and that's the EOSC Observatory, which you may have come across in these last few days. So that is a service being delivered by the project, so it makes sense for us to also cover that by the service management system. It, of course, covers the EOSC Exchange as well, because the EOSC Exchange consists of services alongside other items that have been onboarded, and those services are collectively part of one aspect of the core infrastructure, and through this it covers the exchange as well, but as you can imagine, to a far lesser extent, because these are not services that are provided by the EOSC itself, the core, but these are onboarded external services. And then it also covers the EOSC interoperability framework, because these are also onboarded onto the exchange as far as the different guidelines, the policies, which are part of the SMS as well. So it pretty much covers an awful lot of the original architecture diagram of EOSC. So service delivery in a federated environment is quite a complicated beast. If you have one organization delivering services yourselves, it's a lot easier to control that service delivery. However, if we're including service delivered by many different partners, as is the case with EOSC, it becomes a lot more complicated. We do need to understand a few terminology here. So what do we mean by a service? It's a means of delivering value to customers by facilitating outcomes customers want to achieve, but without the ownership of specific goals and risks. So essentially, you're giving the customer what they need without the customer needing to actually do everything for the service delivery itself. They're just benefiting from the outputs of the service. This is the definition from ITIL, whereas service delivery itself is the process of providing a service to the customers or internal clients of an organization, whereas the service management system, the SMS, is the overall management system which controls and supports management of services within an organization or federation, as is the case with EOSC. And this definition is from FIT-SM. So there are lots of different aspects of service delivery, understanding who the stakeholders are, what their requirements are, trying to encapsulate those those requirements as form as expectations, which are written in formal agreements, operational level agreements, service level agreements, regular reviews of these agreements, understanding whether the agreed target levels are being met, or if not, why they weren't met, and what we can put into place to ensure that they are met into the future where possible. Maybe running surveys as well, understanding what those needs of the different stakeholders are and whether they are being met. Effective communication is absolutely key. And as I said, there are multiple areas of complexity here because it is federated. We have different levels of service management systems of the federations. For example, EGI is a federation within EOSC. EOSC has its own service management system for delivery of the core. EGI has a service management system at its federation level, and we also have the participants of these different infrastructures within the federation who themselves may have service management systems. So you've got 3 different levels of SMSs, and trying to understand exactly what each one is meant to be doing, ensuring that there is no duplication, is quite a difficult effort. Okay, so one thing that we are really pushing forward within the EOSC Service Management System is the core participation agreements. The core, as I'm sure you know by now, are those services, those critical services which enable EOSC to function. It's the glue, and these services, because they are so critical, need to be properly delivered in a very professional manner, and we are pushing forward an agreement within the EOSC Future project which is covering the level of service that should be delivered to the end users. And the core participation agreement is an indication of intent to enable this delivery of production service within EOSC Future. It covers a number of different aspects, including the service hours, which we are initially defining as 95% reliability, or 98% availability, which is excluding scheduled downtimes, because of course every service needs to periodically bring themselves down to maybe do essential maintenance, upgrades, etc. We have the definition of what the support channels are if there are problems through the EOSC help desk. Response time for incidents, so if a ticket is raised, what those targets are for resolution or first response and resolution, any limitations of the service delivery, the contact person for the service, how often the service delivery should be reported, which shows whether those targets are being met or not. Violations, how they should be handled. We expect there will always be violations. It's a question of how we handle them, and that is encapsulated in this agreement. Any escalation procedures, if there are problems, who is dealing with the escalation and at what levels. Information security, data protection as well is covered in the core participation agreement. The acceptable use policy, what the responsibilities are of both the provider of these core services and EOSC Future as well, and a review of this agreement, which we would like to be yearly. So at the moment we are pushing for one agreement per participating lead provider, which is an infrastructure within EOSC Future. So what we would like to do is to detach this whole thing from a project. A project has a definite time level. We are moving to bring something together which continues into the future without any particular project. So we're detaching it from EOSC Future. So we're putting into place something that can continue afterwards. In the future, we think that a signatory, rather than being any representative from a particular project, should be the EOSC Association itself, who is the signatory, along with the person the organisation delivering the different core services. Okay, I'm almost at the end of my initial introduction, but this is an overview of all of the different aspects of the EOSC Service Management System. These are lots of acronyms here. If you're unfamiliar with them, then I advise you to have a look at the link at the bottom, which is the link to FitSM, which is a free standards family for IT service management. It's a little bit like ITIL, but it's way cut down from ITIL. Essentially, those requirements that need to be met to properly have a service management system in place. Unlike ITIL, it's all freely downloadable, and there are templates in order for you to take them and implement them if you want to. So here is also an indication of, at this stage of the project, which processes could be regarded as advanced and which ones are functioning. All of them are to some extent functioning. It's just a question of how far advanced they are. And with that, that comes to the end of my initial presentation. Are there any questions before we dive into the details of different aspects of the service management system? If not, then our first speaker is Montse, who will be talking about the different portfolios. Montse.
Hi everyone. So as Matthew said, the service management system has different processes, and the first one, and each one of the grounding services, the grounding processes for the service management system is the service portfolio management. So this presentation is to have a look at what is the work that has been done in the service portfolio management, and what is the current status of the EOSC Core and the EOSC Exchange portfolios, which are the two portfolios included in this process. Okay, so the goals of the service portfolio management process are, first of all, it's to define and maintain the EOSC Core service portfolio. If you have access to Confluence used in EOS Future, you will be able to click on this link once that these slides are shared. Everything is going to be shared, and the presentation are going to be recorded, or are being recorded. So you can click on this link and have a look at the EOSC Core service portfolio, but we will see a slide. I think that it's one of the next 3 slides, so we will see a screenshot. Also, another goal of this process is to implement the framework to maintain the interaction with other support groups that they provide feedback into the service portfolio management process, and they provide new requirements that we need to integrate in the service portfolio. The activities that I mentioned here, like A2.2.4, are activities that are included in the EOS Future project, and they are the ones that are contributing to the work done in the different goals. So the last goal will be to support and facilitate the creation of the EOS Exchange resource portfolio. We do it through the EOS portal onboarding team effort, and there is also activity to develop the EOS providers portal, and this internal portfolio is what later on populates the EOS Exchange, the EOS catalog and marketplace, which is the catalog that is the user-facing list of services. So the difference between a portfolio and a catalog is that the portfolio is internal for the organization, in our case for EOSC, and the catalog is something that is user-facing. So I think that it is worth clarifying this distinction. Now we can see again what are the kind of services that are included in both portfolios. So we can see that the EOS Core, as Matthew mentioned just a while ago, it includes services that are basic to support the functioning of EOSC, like the AI, so that people can authenticate themselves, like the service catalog, so that they can have access, help desk, and etc. And in EOS Exchange, we find services that are provided by external to EOSC providers, that they onboard their resources into EOSC. So regarding the EOS Core service portfolio, this is the current status. We have defined how to document the EOS Core service portfolio. We are using Confluence, and it's the tool that is used to develop the service management system for EOSC, at least for now. We have defined how to specify a service. We created a template that we shared with all the providers, with other tasks within the project, so that they provide their feedback, and this is already defined. We set up an initial EOS Core service portfolio. Now we have 15 services that are registered there, but there are more services that need to be included. And we defined how these services will be managed and transition to the different different stages of the life cycle. And we did it creating a service design and transition package. So we have this template that is reviewed, we have the document, and every time that there will be a new transition through the life cycle, let's say from design to launching a service, they will need to provide certain information so that we can coordinate all the different steps that need to happen in these different processes that are part of the service management system. And of course, we manage and maintain the EOSC Core service portfolio related procedures, like how to create an entry into our service portfolio, how to remove it, how to provide new information. So everything is documented and standardized so that it becomes useful, coherent, and can be used after the end of this EOS Future project. We also identified and supported a framework to give information between the EOS Core service portfolio and other support groups, as I mentioned, other EOS-related projects, other people that are working in EOS-related teams, like, for example, the Rules of Participation Task Force. We need to have the information so that we can improve the processes that we work in. This is a screenshot of the service portfolio. So we can see here the overall. It doesn't include, this screenshot doesn't include all of them, of course, otherwise we will not be able to read it, but we can see 4 services that are part of the EOS Core service portfolio, how it looks like, and how is a bit of a detail of one of the entries. So we have many fields of information, like which is the life cycle status of the service that it's been registered in the EOS Core service portfolio, who is the service owner, which is the roadmap linked to the service, what are the access policies, who are the contributing providers to this service, and other areas that if you cannot click on the link, I'm happy to share if you would like to get in touch. Okay, so this is everything related to the EOS Core service portfolio, but we have another one. So we have the EOS Exchange, external services offered by external to EOS providers. So with this, what we do right now is supporting the coordination of the EOS portal onboarding team. Every time that a provider would like to include a service into EOSC, they need to get in touch with the EOS portal onboarding team, and they will check which are the services that they would like to onboard, what are the requirements, and how they must proceed to do this. We also keep an updated conference space for the EOS portal onboarding team, and we create the procedures that define the operation of this team. Also, we are working on creating a criteria to onboard different types of resources. Yesterday, we had a session that was centered about how to onboard data sources and research products, and we were working to create these procedures that are now already being used, but we are also working to create procedures on how to onboard training and how to onboard interoperability guidelines. This is how the EOS Exchange resource portfolio looks like. It's in the EOSC providers portal, and as I mentioned before, it lies there, and the information that is in the EOS providers portal is the one that is then propagated to the EOS portal catalog and marketplace that will be seen by the users before they order one resource or another. And the next steps for the EOS service portfolio management process are to align the architecture, because with the content in the EOS Core service portfolio, there is currently work that it's been done to define the architecture, or to refine the definition of the architecture, and we need to make it completely coherent with what we have in the EOS Core service portfolio. So this is one task that we develop. We also need to finalize so that we are in the advanced group of the service management process. Service management system processes. So we need to set up our KPIs and to set review reports so that we can finalize the definition of this process. We also need to set up a procedure for the integration with EOS Core resources, so that services that are part of EOS Exchange can request the integration to EOS Core resources, and we have clear instructions to provide to these providers willing to be integrated with, let's say, for example, the help desk. If they would like to use the EOS help desk, we will need to define how they would need to do this integration. We also need to work on further procedures because there are many work to do, and we need to do this in an organized way that can be used in the future. And we need to expand the EOS Exchange inclusion criteria that are the rules for the external providers to join EOSC, and set it up for different types of resources, like, as I mentioned, trainings, interoperability guidelines, and review that everything that we have now is still valid and useful. And that's everything from my side. I thank you for your attention, and I would like to especially thank to my colleagues at the EOS Portal onboarding team, the EOS Future Work Package 2 and Work Package 6 colleagues that all of them contribute to this work. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Montse. Any questions?
I have just one comment about this point of setup of the procedure of integration with the core services. So, for example, for help desk, the procedures in place, it's also a part of the interoperability guidelines. So it's better, I think, just to incorporate it in these procedures in the portfolio management. So the procedures are there the same for monitoring. I think there's a couple of other procedures, they need to be just consolidated.
Yeah, so that's the aim. So that once that in the case of these services, these procedures exist and they are somewhere else, we need to bring them back to the service portfolio. And for other services that it doesn't exist, we need to develop them in collaboration with Task 6.2, which takes care of the integration with EOS Core.
Yes.
And on this integration question, it's been pointed out this week that there does need to be clearer guidelines for service providers within the exchange, how to actually go about integrating with the core, knowing what the options are, knowing what the requirements are, knowing what the benefits are. We've started to compile some information, some fact sheets, but it's not complete yet. We need to make sure that they're complete and findable by the exchange service providers. Any other questions from Montse? Okay, if not, then we move to John.
Okay. So is it here?
It should be, yeah, if you just double click on that one.
Yeah, sorry.
That's one, perfect.
Sorry, I don't...
Thank you very much.
Okay, no.
Perfect.
Sorry.
This one down
check.
there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm John Shepherdson from CESDA ERIC. I'm going to talk to you briefly about continuous improvement for EOS Core, Service Management System, and software quality assurance. I'm going to divide that into three. I'll talk a little bit about the EOS Core requirements gathering, then about the Service Management System auditing program, and finally about the work of the Software Quality Assurance Working Group. So for the EOS Core requirements gathering, we've been concentrating on functionality for the front and back office components, i.e. the provider portal and the demand layer, where the consumers go to actually see what resources are available to them. And so we've been looking at various aspects of resource sharing, discovery, resource allocation, composability, the components that make up the EOSC Exchange layer, and some of the EOSC Core components, but also the user experience. And it's been a continuous process of requirements gathering and analysis since the start of the project. Early on, we developed a requirements analysis process which we documented and follow. There's been a lot of engagement with the users through our colleagues in Work Package 10 who've organised the user groups of EOSC consumers, if you like. And so we work with them to find out if they have any particular requirements for these components, to help us prioritize those requirements. We show them designs and mock-ups and get their feedback. And we also show them early implementations and ask them to complete tasks and see how easy or difficult it is for them, and again get further feedback. And then that goes into the development work to make sure that we refine the usability and usefulness of the components as much as possible. And as part of this requirements gathering, we've produced 4 deliverables. There's been a deliverable on front office requirements analysis produced last year, and another iteration of it this year. And also back office requirements analysis was published last year, the deliverable, and again another iteration this year. For the Service Management System auditing program, the purpose is to make sure that we have a service management system that is clearly and correctly defined, so we know what it is, we know where to find the definitions of it. We need to check that we've got everything covered in terms of all the processes that are outlined by FIT-SM. And at least as important as having defined the SMS, we need to make sure we've actually implemented it and are using it correctly. So to that end, we have an audit program. We've got an audit scheduled for next month, and there'll be another one next year. We employ the services of a third-party auditor to get an independent overview of the service management system. That person will look into all of the processes. Matt outlined the 14 defined processes and all aspects of the operation of those processes. They'll see if there are any areas for improvement, any non-conformances, and out of the audit will come an audit report, which we'll then use as a basis for discussion with senior management for the EOSC Future project, and determine what needs to be done, if anything, to further improve the service management system. And then finally, software quality assurance. There is a working group that's been set up with members of different parts of the project, and the purpose of it is to check that there is a consistent approach to software quality assurance across the EOSC Future project. And we focus on the back and front office components, the portal demand layer, and the provider portal. And this really is the link back to the requirements gathering. It's all very well and good having a well-documented, well-followed requirements analysis gathering process. But if we then don't have a quality process for implementing the software that will deliver those features, meet those requirements, then there's not a lot of point. So this is to make sure that we know what we're doing, and we are doing software development to a good level of quality. So the approach of the working group was to sort of baseline the status of SQA within the project, and we did that by running a survey at the start to see what the level of knowledge and implementation of SQA practices was. We created some guidelines and best practice notes and disseminated them within the project. They're available on the internal wiki pages, and we paid particular emphasis to the areas that the survey showed us there was most interest in, which was documentation as code, continuous integration and testing, and continuous deployment. And we're formulating a methodology for assessing compliance with the guidelines. This isn't anything as formal as an SMS audit, but it's a way for us to find out what the current level of knowledge and implementation is, and whether there are any other areas where we can provide help and guidance. And that's it for CSI. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thanks, John. Okay, so CSI, requirements gathering, software quality assurance. So it kind of extends a little bit beyond pure service delivery, but because the project is, in some cases, actually writing software that ends up being services, we think it's useful to extend the activities to cover that as well. Okay, if there are no questions, then I'm afraid it's back to me. And I'll be covering a number of different processes, starting with information security management. So I forgot to present myself at the beginning. So my name is Matthew Fillion. I'm from EGI Foundation. I lead Work Package 7 within EOSC Future, which covers the service management system, which is the thing we're talking about now. It also includes information security, which is a part of the service management system, but is quite complicated, so it's dealt with separately in its own task within the project, and also AAI as well. David Groep from NICEF is the lead of information security management. Sadly, he couldn't be here today, so I've agreed to present on his behalf. So information security management, trust within the Federation, it's a pretty important cornerstone for the success of EOSC. When we talk about information security management, we usually talk about three different things. It's confidentiality, availability of information, and integrity of that information. You need to trust EOSC if you want to use EOSC. If you have any data that you want to deposit within the EOSC infrastructure, you need to know that that data is going to be unchanged. If it's personal data, it's not going to be leaked. You need to know that those services do what they say, and you don't have any bad surprises afterwards if they don't. So the trust is a very, very important part. There hasn't been much discussions of it at this symposium, but it is something which is very much at the forefront of what we're doing. How do we achieve trust? So security is a means, it's a way to support the EOSC mission. It ensures confidentiality, integrity, and availability, protecting our data and services from threats and vulnerabilities. The basic tenet of EOSC security, the ecosystem security, is really boiling down to one thing. The service provider should do no harm to interests and assets of users. So this harks back to the Hippocratic Oath, which is used in medicine: do no harm. It should not expose other service providers who choose to join into the ecosystem to any enlarged risk as a result of their participation in the EOSC ecosystem. And it should be transparent about its information security maturity and its risk to its customers and suppliers. So it should be completely open about it. So this is the basic assumption, the tenet of what we wish to do to make EOSC a secure ecosystem. And this boils down to some minimum requirements in the EOSC core, and also the exchange as well. Clearly, we need to have to treat the core and the exchange very differently. As I said before, the core of these central services that are being delivered are being financed by the Commission, whereas the exchange is all of those other services that choose to join the ecosystem. And we need to be able to be in a position to treat both of these differently, because we cannot apply the same assumptions on the exchange as we can on the core itself. So how do we keep the EOSC secure? Well, we use the concept of baselining, this minimum requirements, and it's a true and tried approach to improve collective security posture. It's used in many federated environments, and it ensures a collective response to prevent the baddies, the miscreants, to hide in unmanaged corners of the system. It levers the collective knowledge and capabilities that each provider already has, because providers pretty much know the minimum what they need to do in terms of security. We need to make sure that they are contributing to the overall security. Those expectations are understood and met as well. And the baseline, as is written, is just here. Only the provider really knows the internals of what they are doing. We're not here to try to dictate anything to them. They know the specifics of their system. We don't want to change that. We want to bring them together, to work together to make sure that there is security across everything. And when problems do happen, and they will always happen, when there are security issues, then we know what to do, and we have identified the different experts across the Federation and across the exchange as well. So the security coordination team is active within EOSC Future, working for the security of EOSC. They are involved in a number of different activities in order to achieve this security. There's a risk-centric self-assessment framework, and this is something that the core providers are expected to interact with, to identify what those risks are, to manage those risks by saying what mitigations could be done, and following up with ensuring those mitigations are actually implemented. The baseline of security policies as well. So policies is something that I will say more about. It is very critical to ensuring that the trust is maintained for a common assurance as well. So there are quite a few standards here, bodies that the security group within Future are involved in. So this is not something that we are reinventing by any means. We are working with infrastructures across the world in this common way of dealing with security. There is an instant coordination hub, and this spans the providers of the core and the exchange as well by invitation, and is based on experience and also exercises. When incidents happen, there is an operational response which can be put into place, and this makes use of the core expertise which we have in the project to understand what the problem is, to getting resolution as quickly and safely as possible for problems which could potentially not involve only one provider but multiple providers. It needs to be agile enough to deal with that. And finally, to foster truth through a known skills program. So there's a lot of knowledge out there. It's a question of bringing that knowledge together and making sure that we are spreading it.
Matt, do you want to go into presentation mode?
Am I not in presentations? Sorry, John. Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. That's better, isn't it? Okay, so what does the information security process do here? As I said, we need to be able to deal with both the core and the exchange separately. We do this in information security by, for the core, having a mandatory adherence to information security, proactive support from the security team, since the security of the core is absolutely central. It underpins the whole of EOSC ecosystem. If the core has big security problems, then everybody does, and the whole of EOSC is affected. So we do need to treat this carefully. For the exchange, it is based on the interoperability framework. We have the policy, which is part of the interoperability framework. Those policies, the security policies, are signed up to when service providers join the exchange. The participants are autonomous, but they subscribe to a shared commitment of maintaining the trustworthiness and security of EOSC. And of course, we do need help from everybody to deal with incident response. So we also plan to run drills. I do not believe they've just happened yet, but the plans are there to put them into place to make sure that people know what to do. When I think about this, it's very much like first aid, and if you go to first aid courses, then some of the things they teach you is CPR. Yeah, if somebody stops breathing next to you, you need to do that CPR. It almost becomes second nature if you do this course again and again and again. So if it happens, you know exactly what to do. It's almost pilot. This is exactly what we need to instill here by ensuring that people know what to do in case of a security incident. They know what to do. There's no panicking. It's a question of calmly contacting the security people and dealing with it. Security incidents will happen. If you haven't experienced them before and you're delivering a service, then you will at some point, or it's just because it's happened and you haven't been aware of it. Okay, so what are the policies then? Policies are fundamental for establishing this baseline approach. We have an AUP for this, acceptable user policy. The advantage about EOSC is that we can have a common AUP for these core services, which means that if you wish to use different aspects of the core, you do not accept an AUP again, and again, because they are all harmonized. So harmonized policies is a big win for us, and this is something the security team makes use of. So we also have the security operational baseline, which are 12 points to make you a trustworthy provider. And I think, here they are. I'm not going to go through each of them, but I do encourage you, if you're interested, to have a look at them. It's really pretty much what you should be doing already if you're a service provider. There isn't anything that should be of any surprise to you in this. It is uncontroversial, and this security baseline is something that we require of the core, and we strongly encourage the exchange. So if there are problems, and I said there are likely to be, who are you going to call? You're going to call the abuse team, and this is the email which we've publicised, abuse@eosc-security.eu. This puts you in direct contact with the security experts, and they can also, if there is a problem specific to one service, then they can contact that service security contact. Because I should say, once you're on board to the exchange, providing a security contact is a necessity. So we already have established this large network of security experts within the Federation. So with that, I think that's my last slide for security. More than happy to take any questions before I move on.
Matt, actually, I have a bit a side question.
Yeah.
In the current situation, we're getting more and more integrations between core services and other services, also community services. And the questions I'm getting, what is the unit responsible for privacy policies, GDPR concerns? Which process or which unit can be addressed for that kind of questions? Because, for example, for integrations, especially between help desk and other help desks, GDPR is a primary concern and should be taken. It's also it could be that for some integrations we need some to have some contracts based on the control and processor agreements. So and all these things. What is? Do you know who is dealing with all that?
So we do have an established within the project GDPR management system. We have some experts. This is specifically for the core. Then it's not for the exchange. So by integration, are you talking about what between the core and the exchange?
Core and any community service, basically. Yeah, so we have the use cases.
We've had this.
External organizations.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily presented in exchange, but maybe with some services. But we are what my primary interest is the integration between the help desks.
Sure.
So where the user data, the user emails, so the sensitive information at some point has to be exchanged, and for that we need to be compliant with GDPR, and I think this is should be maybe more stressed now, because I didn't hear a lot of development in that direction.
So help desk needs to be compliant to GDPR. My belief, and that is shared by a number of my colleagues, is that we cannot expect every single service which is onboarded onto the exchange, the EOSC exchange, to themselves be compliant with GDPR, because there are lots of problems here. GDPR does not apply in all countries. There may be other legislations where there are different laws. And by making EOSC require everybody to adhere to one particular requirement, it's very problematic.
Yeah,
but it should be
understood.
absolutely part of the help desk, yes.
My point is the integration. So integration between the core, EOSC Core service, which is help desk, and as far as we expect multiple integrations, and we have to consider this agreement. So as we are controllers, so this is the definitions. I also would like to clarify who is the controller. Is this EOSC association, or it's the primary the organization like KIT, which basically hosting the help desk? All these questions. So
as I said, we do have expertise within the project for GDPR issues for the core. This is not something the information security management do. Those three aspects of integrity, confidentiality, etc., those are mentioned in the baseline, but it does not specifically mention GDPR. I would suggest you contact the experts to ask for that. Thank you, Pavel. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Yes, I wonder how proactively is the security team. So for services in exchange that points to a external website, will the security team look into problems actively, or only if a user says, okay, I have problems here, I see reasons here, please?
If a user, let's say, hypothetically says, if a user suspects that there is an information security problem with an onboarded service on the exchange, then the user can contact abuse@eoscsecurity.eu. Chances are we will not know much about that onboarded service. There's really very little we can do directly, short of contacting the security contact of that onboarded service to make sure that they are alerted of that fact. We assume that they have already signed up for the baseline policy. They know what the minimum they should do, and we would expect to work with them. If they need any particular help, I don't know, if it's a PHP problem, then the chances are that we will be able to help out centrally. But if it's something which is bespoke in their software, chances are there's very little we can actually do about that. If there are no other questions, then let's move on to cover another couple of processes, which is change, release, capacity, and availability management. Again, these are slides that have been given to me by João Pina, who is not here today. Unfortunately, he could not travel. These are processes which are also covered within my work package 7, and also part of the service management system. They're a little bit, shall we say, back office processes, in that they are less directly relevant to the end users. But for that reason, I'm not going to go into real details about them. I just want to conceptually give you an idea of the aspects of service delivery that we do care about. So the first one is change management. So what is change management all about? It's making sure that changes to a service are properly planned, approved, implemented, and then reviewed in a controlled manner. Why do we do this? We want to try to prevent that change doing something undesirable, doing our best to make sure that that change has properly been considered, properly been tested, planned, thought out, procedure of actually doing that change written down before it actually gets implemented. Problems happen, problems always happen, but at least we can actually have a good go before those problems happen of trying to prevent them and understanding afterwards how we can stop them happening again in the future. So this is what change management is all about. Our implementation is lightweight. It's based on a peer review through changes, through JIRA tickets. We use JIRA within EOSC Future, and this means that we have a record of these changes, and any problems are understood and mitigated against. So it has a number of advantages here. The aim is obviously it improves the quality of service delivery. It is part of the continuous improvement that John talked about, because any problems can feed back into maybe software development, preventing those problems happening in the future. Helps the coordination, because a lot of these core services are not existing in isolation. They are connected with one another. There are dependencies with them. So if we're doing a change, for example, of the messaging service, then we know that there are links to all of the other core services that make use of messaging, and we can coordinate them properly. It also prevents islands of knowledge, so just one particular person knowing about something, by introducing this idea of cabinet responsibility. So the information is spread about what that change is all about, and it means that we do not have one person saying, yeah, let's go for it, and then if that change goes wrong, that one person is guilty. It's more a number of different people who together agreed to do this. So it's got a number of different advantages here. It's not about controlling about who does what. It's absolutely not this. It's a way of ensuring that service delivery improves over time through proper managing of changes. Along with change management, we have release and deployment management, and this links quite closely to some of the aspects that John was talking about, ensuring that there's proper testing happening, there's proper information, there's proper quality assurance happening. There is testing going on, not just of that one component, but integrated testing, and this is something we are actively working on and ensuring comes into the next releases. We've already done it in the past, but we want to reach a point where there's proper integrated testing happening. Many of the product teams are already doing some form of testing. It's a question here of bringing together the results of these testing together, ensuring that the dependencies between different components are known about, and if there is a change, then that is properly integrated with the testing as well. Capacity management is another important back-end process. This is there to ensure that the service has the proper capacity to meet those agreed requirements that have been specified in the core participation agreement I talked about in my first presentation, and is able to continue that service delivery in case there are exceptional situations. So we have capacity plans for core services to try to understand what those aspects of capacity are, and it could be different aspects. It could be technical constraints, for example, memory in the server. It could be people constraints, for example, if it's a very people-intensive process like manning the help desk, do we have enough people for the expected increasing number of tickets that come in as more and more people make use of the EOSC Core in the future? So this is capacity management. Within the process, we have concepts of service level indicators. We have models for adjusting this in the future and maintaining these models frequently, as well as capacity risks. What are the risks for likelihood and impact of these bad things happening with respect to the capacity not being met? And availability on continuity. This is about maintaining that agreed uptime, again, which is specified in the core participation agreement, making sure that the core service teams do have plans to ensure that availability, that promised availability, is met, and continuity is there as well. So this is another important process which has it's a little bit similar to capacity management. It does have a plan in place for these core services. So this plan is created and then regularly reviewed to make sure it remains current. Okay, and I think that is the end of those back-end processes. Happy to take any questions before we move to the next. And I think final presentation. Yeah.
Thank you. Where does the deployment happen? I mean, the infrastructure, is it owned to the hardware by EOSC as an entity, or is there a provider that provides that?
Yeah, there are providers. Those providers are different organisations which are part of the EOSC Future project. So it's not owned by EOSC, it's funded by the EOSC project, and as I say, it's delivered by these suppliers. There is another aspect of the service management system, which is supplier management, where we keep track of who those suppliers are. And there are sometimes a supplier may be, for example, open air, and that open air itself is infrastructure and itself has a partner who is involved in providing that service. So it's a little bit complicated, but they're not owned as such by EOSC.
And another question is the source code for the EOSC platform or core services and everything, is that open source?
It is. What we're trying to do within the project is ensure that that software is made available easily, that we are tracking what the license is. John, would you like to say anything more about that?
Yes, as part of the deliverables that we produce, we have software deliverables that say where the repositories are for all of the components, what the release tags are for the recent release. We're looking as part of CSI in the near future to run automatic checks over the repositories to make sure they meet our baseline standards in terms of README, licensing file, changelog, etc., and then badge them accordingly if they hit the targets and work with the developers to improve them if they don't.
Thank you.
Is it the source code on GitHub or some other service provider?
But by observation, it's mostly, but not exclusively, GitHub.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't impose any one solution. It's very much up to the different product teams. It's kind of a federation of providers here. As long as they are storing it, as long as it's open, that's what we're happy about. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. In that case, I think the last contributor is Pavel. So we move from the more back-end processes to the user-facing processes now. So order management and help desk.
Thank you. Just to switch it to... So I'm Pavel Weber, and I will talk about two major user-facing processes: order management and help desk. And by the way, for help desk, we're using open source software called Zamat, and the all source code on the GitHub. The first process, which is order management, actually I give this presentation on behalf of Deborah Testi, who is not here. Before I come to the description of these processes, I will start with introduction, and actually would like to define or remind you what is actually we understand under process. So because we are talking all the time about the processes, but I think it's important to be sure that we are on the same page, so that the process is basically a set of activities with clearly defined responsibilities that bring specific objective from set of defined inputs. So this is the definition from FIT-SM. And the process typically includes several items: policies, procedures, inputs, outputs, roles, and tools and applications. So tools and applications actually not initially in the process. The process is basically technology agnostic, and tools is already some technologies, but they come into play when the process is being implemented. So when the process is implemented, is in the infrastructure, there are a set of tools and applications defined. And this is also the case for these two processes, ESRM and order management. And this process is rather challenging because In these processes, there are multiple communication channels, many different actors with different roles, users, providers, supporters, shifters, and all that is running in a multi-tenant environment with multiple organizations, units, different dependencies across borders, across countries. Also the cultural differences should be taken into account. So this is the challenges we have for these processes. So I will start now with the order management process with so the aim of the major aim of this process is to fulfill the user requests for the services. So the users make some requests, or we call orders, for services, and the objective of the order management is to fulfill these orders and to provide the resources for the users, resources and services. And to accomplish this goal, there are two major applications or tools. One of them is the EOSC Marketplace, which is user-facing application, and at the back end is the SOMBA. SOMBA is the Service Order Management Back Office, this abbreviation. And so when the service is registered, the provider, the onboarded provider, has to choose two different types of to which the service belongs to. So this is open access, so that the users can access service without any ordering. So it could be the registration in place, but still there is no ordering, or orderable processes. So the orders are required, and they again split it in the orders managed by the provider and managed by the EOSC staff at the first stage. Later, anyway, the provider should provide the services. So I will start with this open access services. So this is, as I say, they don't require the proof from the provider. So the user just from the marketplace directly goes to the service. So in this case, this is the B2Find, and get automatically access. It could be that it might require the users to log in, but the access rights already granted, so there is no authorization process behind that. Orderable services via provider channel. So the user actually also goes to the provider page, but there is the authorization processes in place, so that the user has to apply via the provider channel to get the access to the services. Now this is the major task of the order management process in the EOSC, to manage the orderable services via EOSC channel. And here basically the users the procedure is the following. So the users request the access, and this requests are managed by the providers, but first they are assessed by the team in the back office. And in this basically work, so providers have responsibility to request on this forwarded or not request, but respond on this request, because it could be also that requests cannot be fulfilled, but at least the provider have to respond on them. The requests could be combined, it could be complex, so the orders can contain multiple services, and these orders are splitted across multiple providers. So from the user side, I think it was already several times shown, but I will just quickly go through the steps. So the user comes to the marketplace, finds the appropriate service, and then for some services there is the offers which can be configured by the user. So the user defines the parameters of the offer, for example, how many CPUs he or she would like to get in this order, and then the orders is combined in the project and basically sent to the order management, and at that stage the order management team starts to basically process the order. If everything is okay, the order is forwarded to the providers. If not, there's some clarifications can take place, so the team comes back to the request and asks some questions to clarify what is actually meant, if there is something else needed. So finally the providers get mail with the link to the page, to this Somba page. So Somba is the back office. So and in this page there is the summary of the order. So provider can assess the order and basically say if the order can be accepted for implementation or will be rejected. So there are several fields provider can check, like user contact details, the history of the interactions between the shifter team and user, maybe it's the questions which were clarified already, and at the end the provider can, as I mentioned already, approve or reject the order. So approved, if the provider approves the order, it means that provider basically commit to implement it, and the rejection means that this is is rejected. And here some statistics so far. I think this is it's not easy to read. It is for the last 3 years, I think, starting. This is the number of the orders received in the EOSC portal, and here this is the pie chart which shows how many were approved, implemented. So this is the big section of this pie chart is the orders which are ready, basically, so they're implemented and used by the users, and some of them were rejected, and there is also in progress phase, so some orders are in progress phase. So this is the last slide for the order management procedures in this process. I would say this is more about the procedures, operational procedures of the order management process. And should I move next, or if there are any questions? Yeah.
Okay, I registered a resource in the EOS Marketplace months ago, and I chose this order management through the EOS portal. At that time, it was not possible to create any form with specific things to ask for the request. I have 2 questions. First, it never worked well. I never received an email. I was in contact with the support team. But maybe this was my problem, or it has changed or something. But my second question is, how can I now create a form with some parameters? Is it possible I have to go and edit the resource? And can I change the order management, the order provider, the order request?
I mean,
is it possible?
So you're a provider, yes? You're a provider of the service, and you would like to make an offer.
I already did, but at that time the only thing you could do is you request the user to say, I want to order this, but I couldn't say for how long, or I guess these parameters you have mentioned is that you can now...
Yes, this is these forms, for example, these forms where you can specify exactly, so the user can specify configuration and you define the parameters. So, and for that you have to contact the marketplace team and then they implement it for you. So,
so it's not that when you enter the resource that you specify this?
I think now it's not automatically that you can define it by default. So because there is this implementation of bundles now actively developed by Marketplace, and this, I think after that it would be basically like a default option. For now, I'm not sure that this can be done just without interaction with the developer teams. So this is, I think not many services have this offers, and this should be implemented by request. So you can open the ticket in the help desk, I think, and then I can also talk to people and clarify what is the steps.
But the service has been evolving. What month was it? Do you remember how long ago it was when you had this problem?
It was in the Synergy project, so it was not 1 year, but maybe 8 months or something.
Maybe you could let me have your name and we can have a look into it.
Yes, okay.
A question I would have, Pavel, so it's a little bit unfortunate if requests are rejected. Is there any follow-up activity that can be done to, I don't know, give a bit more information about what they could do to change their request in order to make it more likely to be accepted, do you know?
I think this is in this communication between the shifters. So the shifters actually assess the requests, and this is the first stage when they basically can say how probable that the request can be implemented. And I think this it should be sort of an exception when the request already went to the provider and rejected from the provider. And of course it could be that there is just a limit of the resources. It's not in general the rejection, but if someone asks for storage for some reason, one provider doesn't want to provide storage for the users who are coming from completely different countries. So this is this geographic restrictions sometimes play a role. And I think that the shifters can assist here, that the users further to manage still the request, not if with one provider, but with other providers.
Sure. Any other questions relating to order management before Pavel goes on? Okay.
Okay, and now I come to basically my presentation. This is my primary topic I'm responsible for. So this is the ESRM process and help desk. I think I already several times described many things, so I will try to go really fast and more with focus on the implementation of the procedures. So the ESRM process is basically all about to restore, to work with the incidents, to restore the normal operations, and to respond the user service requests. And that's what the definition says. Of course, in the EOSC future, we see that actually we cannot limit the operations only to that definition, only to restore the infrastructure or from the incident to recover some services. It's also more or less as a communication channel if people have questions, problems, and to establish some connections between them. So in this sense, it has broader meaning. And still we have several procedures defined, which we try to follow. So this is here listed how basically to manage the tickets. And here you also see the diagram which shows the implementation of the escalation procedure. So if the ticket is not processed for a long time, the escalation has to be started, and that means that the ticket will be escalated. So the responsible people will be reminded, they get more and more notifications to manage the tickets. The ticket also will be visible as escalated for the level 1 team, which basically is responsible to escalate tickets to see that everything is running smoothly in the help desk. I think I skip this slide because I already several times shown it. It's about the main major features of the help desk, and yes, that's basically I already described that this is about to facilitate the instant communication support for providers and users with different further capabilities. This is the reference card where you can basically get the information how to access the help desk, what is the knowledge base, what are the interoperability guidelines, and so on. And yeah, I come to the request submission a bit in more detail, so that the user starts the interaction with the help desk by submitting the ticket. And there are several ways we provide to do that. It's via email, via the help desk dashboard, via the feedback forms integrated in the web pages of the services. There is a new method we recently implemented via the Telegram bot, and of course this is the second step. The first step for the user is self-service. The user tries to find the answer in the knowledge base or service documentation. If that's basically not successful, then the user switches to the active interaction with the help desk. And here is just an example of the workflow when contacting the help desk via the Telegram. So the user sends a message in the Telegram. The ticket is created in the level 1. So on the left side you see the Telegram chat on the mobile, and on the right is what actually comes to the help desk. So the ticket is taken and assigned to one of the units, for example, monitoring support. So the agent of the monitoring support then gets the email and also answers the via email, because email contains all the information, and the user basically receives the answer also in Telegram chat. So for user it's actually the communication like just chatting with the infrastructure. Although on the other side there are several processes and several assignments taking place. So we have established quite distributed support groups structure. So this is we have the EOSC Core support groups and support groups. And this is important for this session to say that this EOSC Core groups, they obey the EOSC SMS rules. And there are several providers which now being integrated in the help desk, and for their groups the provider defines the rules. So they're not basically in the EOSC SMS, they're outside. And if I may go through the typical workflow, although it's quite simple, but nevertheless, so the user has the problem, the user is angry, and depends on where the problem is. So if the user doesn't know the provider, it sends just a request to the EOSC central help desk using the email or, for example, Telegram channel. If the user knows exactly the provider email, the provider which is also in the help desk, this request goes directly to provider. So this is basically parallel steps. It depends on the implementation. And then the ticket is accepted by the first level 1 of the EOSC or by the central support group at the provider side. If the ticket is basically solved at that level, the user gets notification the ticket is solved and the user is happy. What happens if that is not the case? This initial support levels, this front support levels, they cannot basically resolve the problem. So in this case, the ticket is assigned to the further groups, dedicated groups at the EOSC level or at the provider level. So this is these groups belong to providers. This is provider subgroup and also EOSC subgroups. And it could be that it's also at that level the ticket is solved, and then the user gets the response. If that's not the case, for example, there is some interaction needed between the EOSC and provider, so this, we are talking about the complex services where the EOSC Core services are integrated with the community services, with the providers, with external provider service, there could be some exchange of the ticket needed between the provider and EOSC, and this is also possible. So, and this can be iterative procedure with which is repeatable, and at the end the ticket should be solved, and this basically the end of this workflow. So the user get the notification about the resolution of the problem. So the integration with the EOSC help desk for providers can be done in two different levels. So the minimum configuration and advanced configuration. For minimum configuration, provider just provides minimum information. This is the number of groups, contact email, which should be integrated with the help desk, and agents with their access rights. Of course, and after that, it's already the help desk can be used by provider. The advanced configuration can be extended further. I just put the major items like escalate, so that the provider has to define the escalation procedure, could require the web forms, different channels, filters for tickets, custom fields, email signatures, and all that. Still, I would like to also to notice that that the connection to EOSC help desk won't solve the problems or requests of the users. So that the provider has to do that still, but it should significantly simplify the communication process to make it more process-oriented, the support of the users. So this is the advantage. And this is already also shown that currently we have multiple communities in the help desk integrated. We have 300 users and 60 agents, and as a next steps we will integrate more communities, provide more customization capabilities, and also with a goal to implement the distributed system of the support channels across the EOSC.
3 minutes.
That's it. I finished.
Okay. Good timing. Thank you very much indeed, Pavel. Do we have any questions?
Just more in a practical sense, I saw that the email domain was an EOSC Future one for the help desk. Will that change after the duration of the EOSC Future project, or as for example, if we were to communicate this back to our service providers and stuff, and that's the email domain currently, but will that be changing, and do you see that affecting things or operationally?
Actually, we will try, of course, to keep the things not to change too much, and for example, if there is a web form then which is directly connected with the help desk, then there is no such problem as the emails domain. Of course, if the project is expiring and we have the contact for the EOSC Future, it will be some maybe replaced by the EOSC just without Future. But in general, if you have as provider you request some support area for your community in the help desk, then you provide your own email, which won't change, which is basically independent on EOSC Future. I don't know if I understand correctly your question.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And as well, do you see after the duration again of the future project, will there be a change in the team of who providing the support, and do you see that could affect it in another sense?
Of course, I mean, we don't know exactly the team which provides the help desk in general. This is the EOSC help desk won't change, so this is provided by KIT. There could be, of course, changes in the particular support units, because support units will be modified when the project expires, there's future expires, there will be another project. The core services will stay. The support teams for the core services will also stay. So I would say that major part of the help desk will stay to, I don't know, 80% maybe, as far as we have EOSC portal, as far as we have our dashboard and all this established infrastructure. There could be, of course, small changes over the time with the deviations, but there will no basically introduction of completely new structure, because this is basically the work which is already taken for already took many years, and we will just
it's gradually evolving. I would really not expect there to be any big changes in the functionality at all, so rest assured. But it's a very good question about the EOSC future domain, and
yes.
We will look to replacing that with something which will persist independent of projects.
Perfect. No, thank you for that, and that's reassuring to hear as well.
Any other questions? John?
Just to sort of follow up slightly on that one, with my CESDA hat on, we, as you saw from a previous slide, we use the EOSC help desk, and we provide a CESDA-based email address for support, so the user doesn't know or care that it's actually going on into the EOSC future help desk. And we also provide web forms on the front of our products, so they can fill in a web form, and again we keep them one step removed from the implementation of the help desk, so they don't know or care what domain it's on or where it is, and that works fine.
Just a small question, is CESDA directly providing services, or is it for a federation of... Sorry? Is CESDA directly providing the services, or operationally, or do you have sub-members providing those? Just, I'm looking from the Elixir perspective, where we have all our different nodes and our service providers between them, but if we were to provide Elixir direct support, it would have to go through multiple layers then. And just looking at the case of CESDA in that case, as another infrastructure.
Talk over lunch.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah.
The scope of this.
Any final points?
Short question. So key to success, I guess, is to so that users see these contact points. Are there any ideas or kind of corporate identity, how this should look like, how this should look like on the provider side? I guess in terms of design, it's quite important. So you can go different directions. So you can hide this, but you can also show it very prominent. So are there already some templates in place?
You mean, I think, if I understood you correctly, that if provider using the help desk and provider has this separate area, for example, provider would like to put the logo and make it more prominent in terms of provider information. So yes, we are working on that, and next year we will basically introduce a multi-portal concept where the provider will get own interface, exactly with branded interface for with a provider brand and so this is basically this concept is we provide the help desk as a service, so that the user basically doesn't see that it's a EOSC help desk. There is this sort of impression that is the provider's help desk. So far, this is the common interface for everyone. So this is the EOSC single interface. So the user will see that it's actually EOSC interface if the user tries to log into the dashboard. Do I answer your question, or?
More or less, it was more kind of, can I as a provider then choose to get a kind of JavaScript code or whatever I need that I can then directly integrate in my website so that I, as provider, do not need to do anything. So I click on kind of button, get the JavaScript and integrate it on my website, and then everything pops up there and says, oh, here contact the help desk, and it's, yeah.
I mean, this is done to some extent. For example, SESTA did it with the web form. So there is this piece of JavaScript which you put on your website, and the web form appears, and this is directly connected with the help desk. So the user just fills this web form, and the ticket is created. And
we customize it slightly because we put a link into to SESDA's privacy policy, because we're dealing with SESDA's users, not EOSC users, so they have to be made aware of our privacy policy when they're entering names, email addresses and things. So very simple customization, very simple integration of a JavaScript form.
Last question, Matti?
Okay, so first, just this was very useful for me to understand the difference in approaches between the core SMS and Exchange SMS. So I think this is something that really would need to be communicated also beyond this room. I think this would be very useful. Now the question, would it be completely wrong to say that the core SMS would map into what the user sees when they see EOSC portal? So that is covered by core. And then when you say that marketplace is the exchange, because I think what users are always a little bit confused, like talking to people, they said, okay, what is portal? What is marketplace? Why are they not the same thing?
Unfortunately, it's not quite as clear-cut as that. So the SMS is completely covering the core, but it only covers some aspects of the exchange. For example, you've seen ISM, ISRM, these cover the exchange, but some of the others less so. We don't have capacity plans, we don't have availability plans for the exchange services. However, the policies cover them all. So it's a little bit difficult, that distinction between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is also like the average user, they have the concept, they have portal, they have marketplace. Yeah. And then the moment you start talking policy, you have core and exchange, and I think sort of mapping these four, and reality is messy. But,
the devil's in the details.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of our session. Hopefully you've gone away with a bit more of an understanding of what the service management system is within EOS. So let's thank our speakers. Thank you very much.